Welcome to The Truth About Acela, episode number 8, the finale.
Please exit through the rear door.
Doors open.
As always, thanks to my patrons. Your donations make this content possible. Welcome aboard the final episode of this series, and aboard the Thanksgiving break, Boston-bound Acela. Looks like we have a lot of people traveling home, or to family on our service today. We're starting at Route 128, and we'll be finishing our journey at Boston South Station, with the intermediate stop at Boston Back Bay along the way. As always, I'll be talking about each station and project along the corridor as we go. Projects along the corridor. A lot has happened this month. Well, mainly one thing, the election. And just a disclaimer, I will not be sharing who I voted for. Psych! You already know I voted for Harris. This man Donald almost made me have my graduation over Zoom. I mean, people are calling Joe Biden sleepy, but I don't know how half of America forgot about that. I mean, it was only 4 years ago. Dementia democracy. We love dementia democracy. I mean, like, yo, if I ever did anything crazy, you're gonna forget, right? But all jokes aside, this was my genuine reaction to the election results when I woke up in the morning.
That's some bullshit.
And back to recording the video I went. As I said before, I don't understand why the Acela stops at Route 128. I get that there's a lot of suburban residents that drive here, but this seems more like a Northeast regional type of station. Especially with the new Aero train sets coming in, there's no excuse for the Acela to stop here. This is the final episode of The Truth About Acela. Finishing this series, we will have covered every infrastructure project that will directly affect the Acela service on the Northeast Corridor. So if you've just found this channel and you're interested, you have 2.5 hours of content. I truly was yapping this series, wasn't I? Anyways, let's talk about where I think these high-speed rail projects will be headed in the future, considering the outcome of the election. I mean, that's what we're all here for. To really explain this, we have to understand Trump, President Trump. The good thing about him being president is that he's already been president and we already know what to expect. Have you ever noticed the pattern with his behavior? And I'm not talking about like the erratic, weird stuff he says, but I'm talking about the actual behavior. All the federal employees going on strike, he didn't do anything. On the topic of abortion, he didn't do anything, just supported giving the power back to the states. When it came down to actually building his wall, he didn't really do that much. When George Floyd got murdered, he didn't do anything. When the dreadful plague was dropped upon us, he didn't do anything. Guys, I don't think Trump knows what he's doing. Oh. And I'm serious when I say that, because most of the stuff that he does, or the stuff that he's done that has been seen as harmful to people on the left, is just giving power back to states. And it's typically certain states that tend to do the regressive and reactionary decisions. Don't want to teach critical race theory so that people understand each other more and realize that racism is actually stupid. This way, some people can truly believe that they're eating the cats and the dogs, or someone to come up to me and say, go back to my own country, excuse me, or even shut down and take away funding for public transit. Because the thing about public transportation is the more people are connected to each other, the more we actually understand each other. The reason why America is so split up is because we don't have that freedom of mobility. Perhaps they want us to be more divided, that way they can easily spew racist nonsense at us. That way they can distract us from the topics that are actually plaguing our society. So the next time your politician decides to cut or stall on a public transportation funding source, you should definitely question their motive for doing so. With that being said, for the next 4 years, it is 100% up to the states to step up to the plate for high-speed rail. Some projects are more concerned about than others. Unless Donald Trump wants to run it back with the sequel, COVID 2, New Year, New Me, a lot of these projects are going to be fine. BrightlineWest, Florida, just no more COVID. Please. California high-speed rail, we'll talk about in the next video. BrightlineWest we'll cover in the next series. Hey! And the Acela. Like I said before, no COVID. The reality of it is, I don't think any of these services are truly going anywhere. With the federal government owning Amtrak and the Northeast Corridor making money for Amtrak and subsidizing the long distance services that go to all those little red towns and stuff like that, there's no touching Amtrak or the Northeast Corridor. But the new administration can also just not fund the Northeast Corridor, which is where I think we're going to be headed, and why I say the states are going to need to step up. And reading some of the comments from the last video, some people don't believe this is possible. And again, this is another case where I somewhat agree. But there is hope. For 2 whole episodes of this series, I've talked about congestion pricing and how some of the upgrades to the Northeast Corridor in the New York metropolitan area are attached to it. Last summer, Governor Hochul put a pause on New York's congestion pricing scheme, which would have seen $15 tolls for people driving into Lower Manhattan under 60th Street. All of this funding would have gone to the MTA, with New Jersey Transit getting a small cut of the funding. Both transit authorities are either sponsoring Northeast Corridor transit projects themselves or sharing a cut of the cost of the Northeast Corridor upgrades. Me and a couple other commenters on those videos guessed that the pause was only because of the then upcoming election, and that's what I call a W hypothesis, because it turned out to be true. After Trump was called president, she quickly switched back in favor of congestion pricing, knowing that she wasn't going to get any of that sweet federal funding anymore. What does this comment say? Task failed successfully? I guess so. But there is a catch. The peak hour toll will only be $9, not $15. And during off-peak hours, it's only $2.25. Cheaper than taking the subway. But okay, I guess. Something is better than nothing.
Critics say she really put a pause on the program because of the election. But now some are voicing concerns that this fee, while lower, will just make things worse. Even members of her own party are criticizing this move.
We should not be rewarding New York for reckless mismanagement at the MTA. And it is reckless, right? Look at their budgets. They blew $700 million a year on fare skippers last year.
Sir, your transit authority is in a $1 billion operating deficit. New Jersey Transit literally might not make it to 2027. New York's public transportation spending should literally be the last thing on your mind. It's like a JV high school basketball player trying to give Shaq tips. And this is what reinforces my idea of the reason of why I don't want through running through Penn Station. Connecting 2 to 3 systems together would be great for our economy if there wasn't a literal border splitting up the 3 systems. New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut use 3 different systems of electrification, different governance, different 40 to 50 year capital plans, different signaling, different rolling stock, and different crew training. Yes, they all serve the same region, but they couldn't be more different. As you saw in Acela episode 5, I talked about how New Jersey Transit will see a $1 billion deficit by 2025, since the state struggles to come up with funding resources for their own transit. The Connecticut Department of Transportation is similar in the fact that they jointly work with the state of New York, but also struggle to fund their own projects, hence the increased level of federal support that you see in the past 2 videos in comparison to other states on the corridor. And this is where I think a lot of people sort of, especially, you know, if you're come from a different country, the United States of America is essentially 50 countries under one nation. We fight each other politically, economically, and at one point, physically. New Jersey has a history of doing things to hurt New York economically, and New York does the same to New Jersey. It's just kind of how it's kind of how it is. Neither can ever agree to fund transit between the states. The Gateway program is a great example of this. The program is as expensive as it is because the states kept arguing back and forth about the percentage of funding they should both put in. 20 years later, and the prices have now skyrocketed. We now have 4 different transit authorities just to manage joint transportation between the 2 states. I've pretty much lost all hope of the collaboration between these 2 states. Understandably, no state wants their taxpayers to be on the chain for another state's lack of funding. Completely understandable. Something I actually agree with. Like, I don't want to spend my taxpayer money on a state that has a $1 billion deficit because they can't pay their own fair share of their own transit system. Fund your public transportation. Taxes that are already extremely high for New Yorkers would skyrocket just to subsidize New Jersey not paying their fair share. The only way that through running would work is if a new agency run by a federal authority would take over the service. But this is the thing. Amtrak is a federal company, and even they barely practice through running. Most of the trains originate and terminate in New York. Even the Acela does it, mostly due to logistics, which proves even if an authority was fully capable of through running, it doesn't mean that they necessarily would. I wouldn't spend billions of my taxpayer money just for them to not actually utilize through running, or get into political spats where they purposely start sabotaging each other's infrastructure to hurt the other state, which already happens. With that being said, to go further in this point, and I'll just wrap it up, I'm not a fan of the Penn Station South plan, and I'm not a fan of through running. I'm not a fan of both of them for different reasons that both are actually a lot more complicated and expensive than people lead on. However, as much time as I spent in Penn Station, I do realize that the trains actually spend around 15 to 30 minutes boarding and deboarding, crew changing and cleaning while at the platforms. So there is enough capacity at Penn Station, they're just not using that capacity efficiently. I hope that makes sense in that case. I would like to say though, last thing about through running, in New York at least. We'll talk about through running in Boston South Station a little bit later. But I do support through running between Metro North and the Long Island Railroad. Both use similar rolling stock. You have the difference in the type of third rail they use, but we do have rolling stock available that can work with both types of third rail. Not only do we have the Kawasaki M8s, which is my favorite North American EMU because of their versatility, but there's also the SC44DM, a new Siemens charger type that essentially has the same pickup shoe technology as the Kawasaki M8s. And the locomotive has recently been testing its diesel electric and third rail electric capabilities on the Metro North Hudson line. This locomotive will require literally zero infrastructure upgrades in order to make through running a possibility. So if this locomotive testing is successful and through running does not happen between New York State's own railroads, then I will 1000% lose all hope of through running happening between New Jersey and New York. Anyways, we've just stopped at Boston Back Bay Station, and if you've wondered why I haven't really been talking about any of the projects on this section of the corridor, it's because there aren't that many actually. Boston Back Bay is going to see a ventilation project for environmental concerns, but that's really it.
Stop clear the closing door.
Leaving Boston Back Bay Station, we only have two projects left. One of them is the Tower 1 interlocking, which is just at the approach of Boston South Station. This approach will be redesigned in order to handle the increased level of rail traffic proposed. Last, and certainly not least, we end off on a cliche Northeast Corridor project. Is it A, a catenary improvement project, B, a bridge replacement project, C, a rail tunnel connecting Boston South Station and Boston North Station, or D, a station redevelopment project? If you answered D, a station redevelopment project, you answered correctly, though I think we all wish it was C. There's a project sponsored by the MBTA to redevelop Boston South Station. The current bus terminal over Boston South Station will be expanded. The new bus terminal will increase capacity by more than 50% and will provide more convenient connections to train and subway, is what they wrote. And looking at the diagram for the new floor layout, it looks pretty good. And just north of it on top of the station, there will be a new mixed-use tower called the South Station Tower. This is the first phase of a 3-building development of airspace above Boston South Station and will provide approximately 700 square feet of office space and 166 residential condominium units. The Phase 2 building will be a residential and hotel building built above the expansion of the bus terminal. It will include 440,000 square feet of space and an additional 368 parking spaces. The third and final building will be a 510 square foot building with office space and amenity space above the existing bus terminal structure. Across all three phases, there will be 1.98 million square feet of mixed-use space, alongside an additional 895 parking spaces. An unrelated project is the South Station expansion project. This project dates all the way back to 2010, when there was a $32.5 million grant from the federal government to begin planning for the expansion to the station. The justification for the expansion was that Boston South Station was at capacity. The problem is, a relocation of the Boston General Mail facility would need to take place in order for the expansion to be possible, seeing that 7 more tracks would have been added to the existing 13. The total cost of the project was $4.7 billion. The thing is, most people oppose this project and would rather see the North-South rail link be built, and I am one of those people. The thing is, a 4-track North-South rail link would cost $21.5 billion, and a double track would cost $12.3 billion to $14.7 billion. So, yeah. Not the cheapest alternative. The reason for this is because 3 new underground stations would need to be built. One underneath South Station, one underneath North Station, and an intermediate station that connects to the MBTA Blue Line, dubbed the Central Station. It's really the stations that make this 1.5 mile long tunnel that expensive. The reality of the situation is, this should have all been built during the Big Dig. They put the entirety of I-93, which runs parallel to both stations, underground, and didn't even bother putting a rail connection with it. When I told you last episode that some people really don't think about the future, I meant it. Anyways, welcome to Boston South Station. This also means that we're at the end of our series. As I said before, the next series will be BrightlineWest, and the next video will be a 2-hour long California High-Speed Rail Explain video. Now, 2,000 likes, I know it sounds a lot, but we've hit it before for a 2-hour long Acela Explain video. For those of you who've watched my Brightline Explain video or my Dumbarton Rail Corridor Explain video, know that I go all out for these. Like, I really start ramping up the production. So 2,000 likes for a 2-hour long Acela video. Also 2,000 likes because I talked about politics this episode, and I talked about both Republicans and Democrats. People are gonna be mad and dislike the video out of spite because God forbid somebody critique their favorite politician. One of the videos, somebody tried to false flag it. You might be a normal viewer, but some people they go far with this. So just you liking this video will help combat that. At least even it out a little bit. Also, if you enjoy this channel and are excited to see the California High-Speed Rail video that's coming very soon actually, make sure to subscribe if you aren't already. We're 70 subscribers away from 6,000, and I'm also trying to beat the MBTA because I cannot have them have more subscribers than me. Also, you might want to subscribe because when that video comes out, I'm gonna put a poll on my community page that will ask what series you think we should do after the BrightlineWest series. Here are your 4 options. So it's very important that you vote on that, right? Because voting is always important. Because if you don't vote, you might be stuck with the option that you don't like for the next 4 years. Or in this case, next year. Because this series took a year to complete. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss that poll. Anyways, as I said before, thank you for watching this series. But this is the last stop, and it's time to close the doors for the final time. As always, if I earned your like and subscription, I love you. If you made it this far in the video, thanks for watching.
Doors open.